Government contracting. For many, that phrase invokes more questions than answers, and they stop there because they don't know where to start. If you ever wanted to know more or get an insider's understanding of government contracting, then you're in the right place. My name is Ricky Brown, and my goal is to equip you with the tools necessary to be a successful government contractor. Before I get into the basics of government contracting, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's start the conversation. If you want to understand government contracting, then you must understand its foundation, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, better known as the FAR. Every process and procedure for government contracting is rooted in the FAR. The Federal Acquisition Regulation system is established for the codification and publication of uniform policies and procedures for acquisitions by all executive agencies. The FAR system consists of the FAR, which is the primary document, and agency acquisition regulations that implement or supplement it, such as the DFARs, AFARs, AFARs, and so on. The FAR system does not include internal agency guidance of the type described in FAR Part 1. Since the FAR is a chapter of another regulation, the major headings in the FAR are subchapters. The FAR is prepared and issued through the coordinated action of two councils: the Defense Acquisition Regulatory Council and the Civilian Agency Acquisition Council. Membership includes representatives of the military departments, the Defense Logistics Agency, and NASA. The DART Council also maintains the DFARs. The FAR is jointly maintained by the General Service Administration and the Department of Defense. The major takeaway from all of this information is that the FAR is the Bible for government acquisition personnel. Every process and procedure starts with the FAR, and contracting professionals are taught to review the corresponding sections of the DFARs, AFARs, etc., along with internal guidance whose roots started in the FAR. The link to the FAR is provided in the description below. To illustrate how the FAR is numbered, FAR Part 19 covers the small business program. In FAR 19.201, it establishes the government policy concerning small businesses. DFARS 219.201 supports this policy by stating that for defense agencies, the head of the contracting activity is responsible for assigning a small business technical advisor, and AFARS 5119.201 further outlines the duties of the small business specialist. This is the basic process of how the regulations either implement or supplement the FAR. As you can see, the implemental and supplemental regulations are organized the same with corresponding numbering. The DFARS is for the Department of Defense. It may either implement or supplement the FAR. It allows the DoD to provide additional information for its buyer to carry out FAR guidance. The AFARS is for the Department of the Army. The AFARS implements and supplement the FAR, the DFARS, and the DFARS PG&I, which establishes uniform policies for Army acquisition. The AFARS is for the Department of the Air Force. It establishes uniform policies and procedures for the Air Force, implementing and supplementing the FAR. The DFARS and other Department of Defense publications concerning contracting, AFARS, MP&IG, are corresponding resources arranged by part which correspond to relevant FAR parts. Unless otherwise precluded by law, executive order, or regulation, deviations from the FAR may be granted when necessary to meet specific needs and requirements of an agency. The FAR, its supplements, and deviations can be accessed at the link provided in the description. So the takeaway of all of this information, in addition to how the FAR and its supporting regulations interact, are deviations. As previously stated, deviations allow organizations to deviate from the FAR and DFAR due to the time it takes to implement revisions. An example of this is the class deviation increasing the simplified acquisition threshold. This deviation was released in August of 2018, and it effectively increased the SAT from 150 to 250,000, and it remains in effect until incorporated into the FAR or DFARS, or unless otherwise rescinded. As you can see, FAR revisions are not timely, and deviations are essential for contracting professionals to remain on track with laws passed by Congress. Because of these regulations, government contracting is completely different from contracting in the private sector. To fully understand its magnitude, we must look at how the branches of government affect the contracting process. In the executive branch, the president manages contracting operations by issuing a variety of directives, such as the Office of Management and Budget Circulars, Office of Federal Procurement Policy Letters, and the President's executive orders. In the legislative branch, the House and Senate are responsible for passing legislation affecting how the federal contracting professionals conduct business and appropriating funds through the budgeting process. And finally, the judicial branch is responsible for interpreting laws passed by the legislative branch, rendering decisions pertaining to the terms and conditions of a specific contract. Now, the Constitution initially did not allow the government to enter into contracts until 1831, when the Supreme Court decided in the United States versus Tingey that the government has inherent power based on sovereignty to enter into the contracts and implied power for the proper performance of its duties. Now, there are several statutes and laws, such as the Armed Services Procurement Act of 1947, which governs procurement procedures for DoD, NASA, and the Coast Guard. The Competition and Contracting Act of 1984 establishes the use of negotiated contracts when the government predominantly used sealed bidding. It also mandates for a stoppage in work during protests. The Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act of 1994 established policies for acquiring commercial items, utilizing task orders, and established simplified acquisition procedures and stimulated electronic commerce. The Federal Acquisition Reform Act of 1996 outlined the processes used to acquire government requirements, such as the posting requirements of $10,000, $15,000, and $25,000, which I'll explain later in detail in the upcoming solicitation series of videos. The Prompt Payment Act of 1982 and its amendments make it an imperative that contractors are paid within the required time frame stated in the contract, which are normally 14 and 30 days, or you will automatically be entitled to an interest penalty. The Buy American Act requires that only domestic end products and supplies are acquired for public use with some exceptions. The key takeaway from all this information is to pay attention to the President and Congress as they directly affect government contracting. Just recently, Congress directed the DoD to cut spending, which directly affects contracting. Each organization within the DoD was instructed to reduce the value of high-dollar contracts by a certain percentage before a particular date. So as contractors, ensure you're providing an essential service or supply to lessen your likelihood to be affected by these cuts. Well, this was just an introduction, and I hope you enjoyed this video and have a better understanding of the regulations governing government contracting. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you like anything, all you have to do is ask. Please comment your thoughts, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss out on the videos and advice that will build with each iteration. See you next time.